Good evening, guys. Welcome back to another episode with Blockchain Broad. Good to be back with you guys. If you would please, as you come into the door or you come on to the video, please smash up the like buttons. And if you would please subscribe and share with a friend if you feel free to do so. And if you feel motivated or you feel the zeal to share with a friend, I would sure appreciate it. So tonight we're going to talk about inflation. I'm not going to hold you long. I just want to get into a discussion about inflation, maybe what inflation is at its core. Where are we as far as in the United States, as far as inflation is concerned, how it hurts us, and maybe what will happen if we do not get inflation under control. And that's not only in America, but there are several cases where inflation or hyperinflation has destroyed societies and countries in the world and throughout history. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to talk about inflation. As you know, we've been having an inflation issue, and it's kind of been on the forefront and been in the media about the inflation issue we've been having. And I know that you guys have probably felt it a little bit going to the grocery store, going to the gas stations, going to the various things you have to do in life as far as in our ecosystem and to make purchases and things of that nature. There's a gentleman that said once before, he's known for this quote. He said, "Everything in the world is goods and services. The rest of it is accounting." And then there's another quote that goes, "It's the balance sheet, stupid." And so when I hear things that I'm a finance and numbers guy, have been all my life, and that's my claim to fame. I know my lane. I'm a finance and numbers guy. I'm an economics guy. I'm a wealth management guy. I'm a money movement guy. And so those are my passions. And so when I hear things that don't sound right from an economic standpoint and from a number standpoint, just basic assets and liabilities, then it's just not going to line up with me. And I cannot say that, oh yeah, this is cool and just roll along with it when I know better. So tonight we're going to deal with inflation. And we'll deal with other topics going down the road. But basically what inflation is, probably the basic thing that it is, and one good explanation that I've heard as far as a definition for inflation is too much money chasing too fewer goods. Too much money chasing too fewer goods. You can add to that with inflation, you can add to it the decrease of purchasing power over time, or the decreasing of the value of your money over time. Inflation causes that too as well. And so that's more of a cause of inflation than what inflation is. So we'll deal with that a little bit here tonight as far as what inflation is. We'll talk about maybe different things to combat it and what may happen if we don't get inflation under control. Because understand this, guys, more than anything else, we have to get inflation under control. So let's do one thing here tonight. We don't have, before too long, us here in America, before we get to a November election, we don't have before too long here in America before we have another president. And this is the thing about it. No matter who gets in the office, you have to, I don't want to say you have to do it, but you're going to, most of you or a lot of you are going to exercise your right to vote for whoever you want as your candidate. But know this, no matter who we get in this office, they have to get inflation under control. For if they don't get inflation under control, all the love you have for that candidate, all the appreciation you have for that candidate, all the things you can mention as to why you voted them into the office, that will fade away very quickly if inflation gets out of control. I'm going to say this again. All the love you have for that candidate, all the appreciation you have for that candidate, the reasons why you voted for that candidate. If this inflation problem doesn't get under control, that love affair that you have with that candidate will fade very quickly. Because no matter all these different things that are said on both sides of the spectrum, or on the left aisle or on the right side of the aisle, it does not negate the fact that when you go out and you have to purchase and you have to live in life, that you're going to your grocery store, you're going to the gas tank, you have these prices that you're paying, and you have to make a decision. Well, am I going to put more gas in the car? Am I going to get more groceries this time? Do I have enough to get more groceries this time, or can I get more gas this time? Well, can I purchase this or that? Because the price is going up on those goods. And I'm going to tell you this too, guys. I don't care what anybody says. It has very little, if anything, to do with price gouging. And I'll get into a discussion about that. But when you go in there and you talk about changing the price of, let's say, grocery stores, well, me as a finance guy, you business people understand this too as well. Grocery store profit margins are way too low to price gouge. When you got profit margins between 1% and 2%, and the grocery store's profit margin, I would say last year, towards the end of last year, was something I want to say like 1.6%. That's the lowest it's been since 2019 when it was at 1%. With profit margins of 1% to 2%, you cannot price gouge. So the grocery store owners and the people that understand the numbers, they're looking like, price gouging? Our profit margins are only 1% to 2%. So we'll get into a discussion about that. So basically, inflation is too much money chasing too much money chasing too fewer goods. So let me slow down. So that's a great definition of inflation. So what are the causes of inflation? Why does it happen? Well, in my opinion, and I think this is a big reason that we're going through some inflationary problems right now, is in 1970, we stopped our gold standard. So Richard Nixon came in. I believe we had a deficiency in gold. We had gold leaving the country. A lot of people taking gold that maybe had gold in the country that was protected by us. Of course, our money was backed by gold, and our money had been backed by gold for about 180 years. And that's how we came up economically in America. That's how we came up and put ourselves in position as a superpower, because our currency was backed by gold. It was backed by something tangible. It was backed by something valuable. So when Richard Nixon stopped the gold standard in 1970, I believe this is kind of what spurred the problem of us having these issues with inflation and around our purchasing power and money soon after that. Because as you know, in the 70s, those of you who were alive then and those of you who remember and that were working and that were living then, that are listening to this video, there were a lot of problems in the 70s. A lot of problems with inflation, a lot of problems with the gas. I think there was a big supply chain issue in the 70s. So it went through a lot of issues. And I think a lot of that was brought on by stopping the gold standard. So from that time on up to the present time, I believe that our purchasing power, as far as the dollar is concerned, has been losing its value over time. And so I think it started there. So we get to the present time, and what we've been doing over time, and I talk about this in previous videos, in order to get ourselves out of situations, what we continue to do, which is another cause of inflation, is we constantly print money. And as you inflate the economy with the constant printing of money, as you inflate that bubble of the constant printing, that causes inflation. And anything we know about a bubble, if you continue to inflate that bubble, eventually that bubble is going to go past capacity and it's going to burst and it's going to pop and it's going to spill over. No one knows when that's going to happen, how it's going to happen, but they can feel certain remnants of it. A lot of people, maybe in economics and things, call it shocks. It's not the earthquake yet, but you feel the shocks of it. Like you feel the shocks before the actual quake comes. So before the Big Daddy comes, you feel the shocks. So we've been having certain shocks over time that's been giving us a warning signal that, hey, you guys better get things in order or this thing is going to get way out of control. So when people come on the media and all that stuff and they're talking back and forth and all this stuff back and forth about, the political spectrum or just other things in general that really, I guess it has its place. But in my mind, I'm like, man, we have to do something quick. We are in trouble. So too much money chasing too fewer goods. Good definition of inflation. And when you constantly print money, that adds to the inflationary issue. Now, let me go ahead and say this. With inflation, I would say with the purchasing power, since we stopped the gold standard, it's been losing the purchasing power over time. To put it more into perspective, so I would say 2001, 2002. What you would have paid $1,000 for in 2001 or 2002, it will cost you around $1,820 right now, or $1,860 right now in today's money. So basically, what that means is you've lost about 86% of the purchasing power of your money in the past 20 years, and you don't even recognize it. That is scary. But I know you see it when you go to the grocery store and when you put these little bit of products inside the cart and you go to the checkout, and when you put your card into the system and you scan it and you put the chip reader in into the to the credit card slider, you put it in, and then when that comes back, and you can already see it tallying up there, especially if you go to like Walmart or something like that, you can see what your price is going to be, and you start seeing those things come across, and then you get to the end of the sum. You see the total of what you're spending for the little things you have in that cart. Reality hits you real quick. Like, what is going on here? Or you go to the grocery store and what used to be, it seems like more inside the package or more inside of the product, it's way less than what it used to be. It's like it's more air than product now. it's it's I'm laughing, man, because you have to laugh to keep from crying because it's really scary. So these are the things that you're dealing with as a result of what we're going through right now. It's all relative as far as inflation. You can have supply chain issues. All of it goes hand in hand because in economics, everything is tied together. So our purchasing power has lost about 86% over the past 20, 21 years, which is just crazy to think about. But what's been keeping us afloat is our ability to print money. The problem we're running into now that we didn't run into in the 70s with Richard Nixon, or we didn't run into with any other president, or what we're going through right now, we have a very important election coming up. We have a lot of things that we've gone through over the past 4 years, from a global pandemic to where we are now. And I know you guys feel it here in America. Things seems there's a lot of instability going on right now, a lot of uncertainty. We don't know where we're going. I'm pretty sure there's a little bit of fear there, but maybe not. But there's a lot of uncertainty going on right now. And I will add to that in the midst of what we have going on right now, I don't think we've seen a exodus from the dollar like we see now. We hadn't seen this ever during our lifetime, in my opinion. So much so that you have countries that used to have the dollar as the reserve currency that were invested in our system, whether through bonds or whether through government-backed securities or anything else, where they held reserves in our country. Well, they've been pulling those reserves out. So you think the Chinas or the Russias of the world, or other countries for that matter, they're going to establish their own currency now. We've never dealt with that dynamic before. So they're establishing their own currency called the BRICS. And the last time I talked, they had maybe 9 countries. They were adding 2 more, which would made 11 countries. So now I'm reading that when they have their summit in October, they're going to add 47 more countries that's already on board that they're looking at adding. Not only that, but now, since the last time we talked, that 47 additional countries, well, there are also going to be an additional 159 countries that are going to be part of their system. Because what they're going to do, along with this BRICS currency they're looking at establishing, they're also going to have a system that is very similar to SWIFT, or to rival SWIFT, which SWIFT is the number one. It's like a legacy system, but they've added things on to make it more updated for the future and more updated to the times. So SWIFT is the biggest cross-border overseas system of money movement in the world and probably in history. So they're building their own SWIFT system, which is called BRICS Bridge, that 159 other countries have already signed on to. So not only did they have 11 countries that were already part of BRICS, they're adding an additional 47 countries in October at their summit, at their yearly or annual summit. Then on top of that, it's going to be an extra 159 countries that are going to be a part of the BRICS system, which is going to be their version of SWIFT. So you add to the fact that we have an inflationary issue. Our dollar is losing its purchasing power. And you have an exodus away from our dollar to make their own currency. This could be a very combustible situation, and I don't think people are taking this seriously enough. Hopefully, America has something that they're working on to bring their system up to date. But the first thing we need to do is get our inflation under control. And let me stop here. So I told you about this, what inflation is. So certain things that can cause inflation is too much money chasing too fewer goods. The constant printing of money also causes inflation. So when you print, and continue to print your way out of things, it causes inflation. This is a part of economic stimulus. If you didn't know that, the constant printing of money is a form of economic stimulus. The different programs that you may issue out, different certain tax credits, certain things or breaks that you give people, all these things add to it. Okay, so these are part of economic stimulus that can add to inflation. So you have the constant printing of money. You have too much money chasing too fewer goods. All of that can add to inflation. So I'm trying to think of another thing that could add to inflation. Maybe that's slipping my mind right now. Those I want to say are the two major things that can add to it. But also, let me throw this in here too as well. We cannot forget this. Government spending. Government spending is another thing that adds to inflation too as well. As the government spends, a part of that too is printing money to spend. Because as they look at giving out these certain tax breaks or giving out these certain credits, which, a lot of people benefit from, but what it does is it hurts in the long run because we don't have any money like that. We are $35 trillion in debt. Let me say this again. We are $35 trillion in debt. So when they look at giving out these certain programs or giving these certain tax breaks or giving these certain credits, where do you think they're going to get the money from? Tell you where they're going to get it from. They're going to print it. Because we have the ability to print money. So as you continue to print money over time, your money loses its value. That's just the way it is. That's the fact of the matter. Okay, this is not some left side, right side. I'm not playing with your feelings, playing with your emotions, Democrat, Republican. I'm not going through that foolishness. I'm dealing with the facts of the matter. As you continue to print and print and print and print money, and no matter who's been in office, they have continued to print money. Eventually, that's going to add to inflation. And your money is going to continue to lose purchasing power over time. Now, you don't want to get to a point where you have a Weimar Republic. If you don't know what that is, you need to look that up. Weimar Republic in Germany, of what happened to their currency. Currency had gotten so bad to where it was so worthless that they began to use the money to stay warm with. Put it on the fire. Think I'm lying. If you want to, go and look it up. Weimar Republic. But some of these things where you've dealt with hyperinflationary things have happened in history. It happened with the Weimar Republic. And you can see different things maybe that's happened in Africa where the money's lost its value. And you saw these different uprisings. That's another thing that you have to deal with. Where people worked hard for their money and people have saved, they have retirement, they have trust, they have all these different things that they worked on over their life. And going in, putting in work, putting in the hours to save and provide for their family. And then you get to a point and now what you work for is not worth anything. A honeymoon in that office can end real quick. I don't care if it's Democrat, Republican, whoever. Let that happen and see what happens. So this is a very serious situation. It's very serious to me, and it should be serious to you as well. So these are things that can cause inflation. And this is what's happened over time. Well, what can we do in order to get inflation under control? And I'm just throw a couple of simple things out there, and maybe we can do more of a deep dive at a later time. But just real simply, a couple of things you can do to get inflation under control is economics. Economics 101. One of the things you can do is you can put more supply in the market. As you put more supply in the market, or whatever it is that you're trying to lower the price of, then it lowers the price. For instance, you want to lower the price of fuel and energy, then put more oil into the market. You want to decrease labor costs. Well, if you want to decrease labor costs, then put more laborers into the market. So ideally, whatever you're trying to lower the cost of, if you put more supply into the market, then that's going to help lower the cost. So that's just one basic thing I think that can be done. Another thing that we need to do is we need to stop the government spending. Well, we know they're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. In a perfect world, it would. But they need to decrease the government spending. So a lot of different things that government spending is being used for, a lot of different programs, whether you like it or not, some of these programs may have to be cut because we have to get ourselves back under control, because right now things are getting out of control. So we have to cut down on the government spending, which I don't think they're going to do, but that's another way that they can get our inflation under control. Another way that inflation can be brought under control, another way that maybe something that you could add to it, is stop the constant printing of money. That's probably another thing they're not going to do, because it's part of our economic footprint now. It's what we do in order to get ourselves out of situations. In order to get themselves out of the situation in the 2008 financial crisis, the Great Recession, the way they got us out of that situation, they should have let probably more businesses fail. I know that sounds bad, but when I worked at BB&T, BB&T was actually in good financial standing. We didn't get involved in the subprime lending, and we didn't get involved in that market that way. So our finances look really, really good. So really, we didn't have to take any stimulus. But what people don't understand, and people that's not in that world maybe don't know, is that even the banks that were in great financial standing, that didn't need anyone to come in and help, didn't need anyone to come in and take over, that never got involved in the subprime lending, that never got involved heavily in credit default swaps or CDOs, those banks still had to take the TARP money. You had to take it whether you wanted it or not. And I think the reason being is because they wanted to make it seem across the board that this was given to every bank to give the illusion that this was the whole system, and that no bank is better than the other when it comes to taking this money. Every bank had to take it. So whether you were in good financial standings or not, you had to take this TARP money. Well, this TARP money, TARP, that they gave to every bank, where do you think that came from? They printed it. They printed that money, man. You're talking about millions, maybe billions of dollars that was given out in TARP money that was printed, that we didn't have, that was used to pull people out of that financial debacle. At some point in time, that constant printing of money, it may not be your generation, it may not be the generation after that, but somebody's going to have to pay that bill. Somebody's going to have to deal with that. And as you constantly do that, and we've built up trillions of dollars in debt, $35 trillion right now in debt that we have. What are we going to do to get ourselves out of this? We have to start making some decisions right now that may be difficult in order to get inflation under control. And appeasing the public, appeasing people, appeasing this, that, or the third, that's not going to help, because you're going to find at some point in time it's going to come to a head. And why is it going to come to a head? Because it's the balance sheet, stupid. It's economics. It's assets and liabilities. It's accounting. If the numbers don't make sense, they don't make sense. Now, you can cook the books like you did with Enron and different things like that during the Clinton administration or during those times, or WorldCom, but eventually it's going to come to a head. And so this is not an illusion. So you have to do these certain things to get inflation under control. And those are just basic things I would think of. And it goes a little bit deeper than that. But I want to say those are some things that you can do right off the top. So what happens if we don't get inflation under control? Well, what happens if we don't get inflation under control is what happened during the Weimar Republic. Then it's going to go into a form of hyperinflation. And as it goes into hyperinflation, you're at a point of no return at that point. And then it goes into some heavy restructuring. And when I say heavy restructuring, I mean that's to the point where your economic makeup, your whole ecosystem is broken down to nothing and has to be built up from the bottom. That's not something you want to see happen. I promise you, you don't want to see that. If you don't get these things under control right now, there's something that's going to happen that's going to bring your ecosystem down to nothing. And you have to build it back up from the ground up, maybe with some help from somebody else. You don't want to see that happen. So hopefully we don't get to the point of hyperinflation. We still have the ability to print money. Thank God for that. But eventually that's going to come to a head. We have to find a way to get this inflation under control, get some respect back to our economy, and get the purchasing power back to our dollar, because we don't have the power like we used to. Now, this is the thing. One, I would say, example of a place where the printing of money doesn't hurt them. And see, this is the thing about printing money. It's supply and demand, guys. It's economics 101. If what you have is in high demand, let's say you're a smaller country. Let's take Switzerland, for instance. You have the Swiss franc. Switzerland is a smaller country. However, as you and I know, anyone that's worth their salt in the finance area of the spectrum, the Swiss franc is always in high demand. Always in high demand. It's very well respected. And anytime anyone throughout the world maybe is going through something, or they're looking for a place to put their money at overseas, Switzerland is one of the first destinations they're looking for. Maybe Liechtenstein too as well. Look Liechtenstein up if you don't know about Liechtenstein. But Switzerland is a place where the wealthy look to park their money, because it's the Swiss franc is always in high demand and it's well respected. So when you have a smaller country like that, where their currency is in high demand, then they have to print money to keep up with the demand. But see, the thing about us here in the United States right now, our dollar is not in high demand like it used to be. So the constant printing of money on our end doesn't help like that. It gives the negative effect of what it would do in Switzerland, because we're not in high demand like that anymore. That's why people are leaving the dollar, these countries, and establishing their own currency. We have to come to a harsh reality of those things, and we have to deal with it. What are we going to do to reinvent our monetary system? What are we going to do to keep ourselves on top? What do we have to do? Do we need to, well, China's purchasing all the gold right now. So I don't know how much gold is left. Maybe China left a little bit to purchase, but I don't know how much is left. Maybe we go back to backing our money by silver, like they did during the Old West, where you have places like Arizona that had a lot of silver. Like Tombstone, Arizona was a place that had a lot of silver and overabundance of silver. So maybe we go back to backing our dollar, since we don't have all the gold anymore and we don't have an abundance of gold. Maybe we go back to backing it by silver or something else that's more tangible, that is of high value. I don't know. there are maybe some certain things we need to look at. And hopefully they're in some type of think chamber or something like that that's coming up with these type of ideas. So these are things that we can do to get ourselves back in order. But if we don't, then yeah, you're talking about being broken down to the very last compound and building yourself back up. And I don't think we want that to happen. I didn't even mean to take up this much time tonight, because we'll get more into some extra discussion, maybe on inflation and different things of that nature going down the road. But I just wanted to deal with kind of the bare minimum tonight to talk about inflation and maybe give you some things to think about. And so what can you do to combat it right now? Well, you have to prepare yourselves, guys, for a rainy day. And to me, that's twofold. You have to try to cut down on spending. You have to try to educate yourself as far as what's going on, and don't be caught unprepared. You know, insurance is a great thing, but insurance is not worth anything to people until you need it. Now, if you need insurance and you don't have it, when something arises, it's already too late. So you have to insure yourself to prepare for the worst. So you need to save up money. You need to save up resources as much as possible. And I don't want to say get dogmatic about it or over exaggerate things, but I think these are some things you can do. Cut down on spending as much as possible. And also as well, you need to have some dry powder on the side. And what I mean by dry powder is you need to have some money on the side, some type of liquidity. Because what ends up happening in these situations too as well is when you have lower economic downturns, when you have things that go lower, from stock to assets to different things, bonds, any other investments or assets, when you have economic downturns, that means that things are at a discount. So when things are at a discount, then you need to have something tangible in order to buy these things at a discount, to where you can hold on to it. And then when there's a economic upturn, then you have something of high value then that you bought at a discount. And it's at your discretion if you want to sell it or hold on to it at that point, or you can sell it and make a profit off of it. So that's when it comes to, you have to be greedy when others are fearful. So when you have an economic downturn, then you go in and buy. So that's just something to think about. All right, guys, I appreciate it. This has been great discussion. I know I rambled a little bit, and I'm very passionate about this area, but I just wanted to get this quick video out here, give you guys something to think about. Thank you. I look forward to talking to you guys again. I hope you have a good night. And remember, always, always, always stay vigilant. Have a good night.